You've seen this one. A woman takes a mystery drug, her brain unlocks to full capacity, and suddenly she's bending reality like a god. Scarlett Johansson in Lucy. $400 million at the box office. The premise? Humans only use 10% of their brains. Unlock the rest and you become superhuman. It's a compelling pitch. It's also completely demonstrably 100% wrong. But here's the thing that makes this myth worth investigating. It won't die. It's been debunked for decades, and Hollywood keeps bringing it back anyway. So where did this idea actually come from? Who invented it? And why does a lie from over a century ago still have enough cultural power to drive blockbuster franchises? Let's trace it back. And fair warning, the real origin story is stranger than the fiction it inspired. We're going back to Harvard, early 1900s, a father-son psychology experiment that would get wildly misquoted for the next 100 years. The year is 1898. Boris Sidis, a Ukrainian immigrant and Harvard psychologist, is raising his son William to be a genius. Literally, it's an experiment. His son William could read at 18 months. By age 8, he'd written 4 books. By 11, he was enrolled at Harvard, the youngest student in history. Boris Sidis believed something revolutionary, that most humans never develop their full potential. The brain had vast untapped reserves. We just weren't accessing them. Here's what's crucial. Sidis was talking about untapped potential, not unused brain tissue. He never said anything about a specific percentage. That came later. His colleague William James, yes, the William James, father of American psychology, had similar ideas. He wrote that average people rarely achieve even a fraction of their potential. But again, potential, not gray matter. James talked about motivation, education, opportunity. He wasn't making a claim about brain anatomy. The misquotation hadn't happened yet. So how did untapped potential become 10% of the brain? That transformation happened over decades. Telephone game style. Each retelling, losing a little more nuance. Early brain researchers didn't help. They called large portions of the cerebral cortex the silent cortex because those regions didn't respond to electrical stimulation. They didn't mean those areas were unused. They meant those areas controlled higher functions. Thinking, planning, personality. Things you can't trigger with a simple electric jolt. But silent cortex sounds mysterious. It sounds like dead space. And in the early 20th century, popular science writers ran with it. Then came 1936. A writer named Lowell Thomas wrote the foreword to one of the best-selling books of all time, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. In that foreword, Thomas claimed that humans only use 10% of their brain capacity. No source, no citation. Just an assertion, in a book that would sell over 30 million copies. That's the moment. 1936, the 10% myth got written into a self-help Bible, and it's been infecting popular culture ever since. And here's why it stuck. The myth is psychologically perfect. If you're only using 10%, imagine what you could do with the rest. It's built-in hope. One neuroscience researcher put it perfectly. The myth persists because it gives the sense that there's something to be unlocked. The neural equivalent to Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man. Self-help gurus loved it. Transcendental meditation movements used it. Psychic powers proponents cited it. Everyone wanted a piece of that unused 90%. The myth even got falsely attributed to Albert Einstein, because of course it did. There's no evidence Einstein ever said anything remotely like this. But attaching genius names to questionable claims is how myths gain credibility. Einstein never said it. Doesn't matter, the quote spread anyway. So that's the origin story. Misinterpreted psychology from the 1890s, filtered through popular science, crystallized in a self-help book, and wrongly attributed to Einstein. A perfect recipe for immortality. Now let's talk about what actually happens in your skull, because the science here isn't complicated. It's just been drowned out by better marketing. Brain imaging technologies, PET scans, functional MRI, have been around for decades now, and they show something unambiguous. We use virtually all of our brain. Not all at once. That would actually be a seizure, but over the course of a day, every region gets used. The whole brain is active, just in different patterns for different tasks. Neuroscientists are emphatic about this. Quote, "We do use 100% of our brain, and we use all of our brains all of the time." Think about it from an evolutionary perspective. The brain consumes about 20% of your body's energy. That's massive. Evolution doesn't maintain expensive organs that aren't being used. If 90% of your brain were truly unused, natural selection would have shrunk it long ago. Calories were too precious in our evolutionary history to waste on dead weight. There's also the medical evidence. Strokes and brain injuries are devastating precisely because every part of the brain matters. There is no extra brain to compensate. Even small lesions can cause profound deficits. Damage to a region the size of a grape can erase your ability to recognize faces or read or form new memories. If we really only used 10%, we'd have a 90% buffer. Brain damage would be no big deal. Obviously, that's not how it works. So by the 1990s, the scientific consensus was absolute. PET scans, fMRI studies, clinical neurology, all pointing to the same conclusion. We use our whole brains. Case closed. Except Hollywood didn't get the memo, or maybe Hollywood just didn't care. 2011, Limitless. Bradley Cooper plays a writer who discovers a pill that unlocks his full brain capacity. The premise is stated explicitly: you only use 20% of your brain. 2014, Lucy. Scarlett Johansson. The number dropped to 10%. The movie made $460 million worldwide. The myth got a global refresh. Director Luc Besson actually knew the science was wrong. He acknowledged it in interviews, but he used the myth anyway because it served the story he wanted to tell. And that's the real issue. It's not that Hollywood doesn't know. It's that Hollywood doesn't think it matters. The myth is too useful as a storytelling device. Think about what the myth provides: an ordinary person with unlimited potential, a clear before and after transformation, and a simple explanation. Audiences understand immediately. That's screenwriting gold. There's a reason superhero origin stories are popular. We want to believe transformation is possible, that an ordinary person can become extraordinary. The 10% myth is just a pseudo-scientific wrapper for that fantasy. And here's the uncomfortable question: does it matter if entertainment perpetuates scientific myths? Some argue fiction is fiction. Audiences know it's not real. But surveys tell a different story. A significant percentage of people believe the 10% myth is true, and movies like Lucy reach audiences that neuroscience papers never will. When scientific myths get embedded in entertainment without any correction, they reinforce public misunderstanding. That misunderstanding becomes cultural background noise, ambient misinformation. And that ambient misinformation has real consequences. It fuels the supplement industry. It powers brain training app marketing. It sells books promising to unlock your hidden potential. So what should you take away from this? First, consider treating the 10% claim as a red flag. Any product or program promising to unlock more of your brain is using debunked science to sell you something. Your brain is already working at capacity. That's the good news and the bad news. Improvements come from learning, exercise, sleep, and nutrition, not from unlocking hidden regions. You might also find this useful as a credibility test. If someone cites the 10% myth as fact, it's worth questioning their other claims. It's a surprisingly effective filter. When you're watching sci-fi movies, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the spectacle. Just don't take the science literally. Hollywood's job is entertainment, not education. And here's a perspective that might help. The real story of how this myth originated is actually more interesting than the myth itself. Misquoted psychology, self-help publishing, false Einstein attribution. That's a better narrative. If you found this kind of investigation interesting, hit subscribe. We do this every week. New myths, new origins, new takedowns. It's surprisingly satisfying. Let me leave you with one last thought. The appeal of the 10% myth isn't stupidity, it's hope. People want to believe in untapped potential because the alternative feels limiting. But here's the thing. Your brain is already extraordinary. 100 billion neurons, 86,000 miles of neural fibers, processing roughly 11 million bits of information per second. That's what you're using right now. You don't need to unlock hidden potential. The potential is already firing. Every thought, every memory, every moment of awareness. That's your full brain, working as hard as it can. The 10% myth is seductive because it promises more. But you already have more. The organ making sense of these words right now, that's the whole miracle. Nothing's being held back. Hollywood will keep making movies about unlocking brain potential. They'll keep making money, and now you'll know exactly where that nonsense came from and why it won't go away. Until next time, stay skeptical, stay curious, and remember, just because it sounds scientific doesn't mean it is. That's what we're here for.